Let's begin our journey into the world of Dungeons and Dragons, a story that starts not with dragons or dungeons, but with a simple game played on a tabletop in the American Midwest. Picture the year 1974. It's a time of bell-bottoms and vinyl records, but in a small town in Wisconsin, something magical is being born. Two men, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, are about to publish a game that will change the world forever. They call it Dungeons and Dragons, and it arrives in a simple white box printed in a modest run of just 1,000 copies. No one knows it yet, but this small beginning will grow into something extraordinary. Gary Gygax, one of these creators, wasn't thinking about creating a cultural phenomenon. He was simply combining his love of medieval history with his passion for miniature wargaming. Before Dungeons and Dragons, Gary spent his time playing Chainmail, a medieval miniatures game where tiny knights and soldiers battled across kitchen tables. But Gary wanted something more, something personal. He wanted each player to control not an army, but a single hero with their own story, their own destiny. The name Dungeons and Dragons itself came from a simple place. Gary's wife, Mary Jo, was looking at the manuscript and noticed that the game featured both dungeons to explore and dragons to fight. It seemed only natural. The name was perfect in its simplicity, capturing the essence of adventure that lay within those pages. When you open that original white box from 1974, you'd find 3 small booklets inside, totaling just 150 pages. The entire game, everything you needed to begin your adventure, fit into these 3 slim volumes. They were called Men and Magic, Monsters and Treasure, and the Underworld and Wilderness Adventures. Together, they cost just $10. $10 for a gateway to infinite worlds. The very first adventure ever published for Dungeons and Dragons was called Palace of the Vampire Queen, released in 1976. But before that, countless adventures were played in living rooms and basements, stories told and retold, never written down, existing only in the memories of those first brave adventurers who stepped into Gary's world. Now, imagine being one of those early players sitting around a table with friends when someone asks, "What do I need to play this game?" The answer was simple yet profound: 20-sided dice. These icosahedral gems, called D20s, became the heartbeat of Dungeons and Dragons. When you roll that 20-sided die, anything can happen. A natural 20 means perfect success, a moment of triumph. A natural 1 means spectacular failure, often leading to the most memorable stories. These dice, in their perfect geometric shapes, became so synonymous with the game that they're now instantly recognizable symbols of tabletop gaming itself. The game also introduced us to a special person, someone who isn't quite a player, but isn't quite not playing either. This is the Dungeon Master, or DM. The Dungeon Master is storyteller, referee, and world builder all in one. They describe the world, play all the monsters and villagers, and guide the narrative while the players make their choices. It's a unique role in gaming, one that requires creativity, fairness, and the ability to think on your feet when players inevitably do something completely unexpected. Gary Gygax himself said that the Dungeon Master isn't playing against the players, they're playing with them, collaborating to create a story that none of them could have written alone. And what is that first choice every player makes? It's choosing their class, their role in the adventure. In that original game from 1974, there were just 3 classes to choose from: Fighting Man, magic user, and cleric. Simple names for simple times. The fighting man would become the fighter, skilled with blade and armor. The magic user, later called the wizard, wielded arcane spells and ancient knowledge. And the cleric, a holy warrior blessed with divine magic, could both heal their allies and smite their enemies. These three archetypes would expand and evolve over the decades, but they remain at the heart of the game even today, in its 5th edition. So there we have it, 9 facts woven into the beginning of our story. A game born in Wisconsin, created by 2 dreamers, packed into a small white box, powered by 20-sided dice, guided by a dungeon master, where heroes chose their path as fighter, wizard, or cleric. And this is, as our story unfolds, let's talk about the worlds themselves, because Dungeons and Dragons isn't just one world, but many. The first official campaign setting, the first fully realized world for adventures, was called Greyhawk. Named after Gary Gygax's own personal castle in his home campaign, Greyhawk was published in 1975, just a year after the game itself. This was Gary's sandbox, the world where he tested his ideas, where his friends' characters lived and died, and lived again. The city of Greyhawk, the Free City as it was known, became a legendary starting point for countless adventures, a place where heroes gathered in taverns before venturing into the unknown. But Greyhawk wouldn't remain alone for long. In 1987, a new world emerged from the mists, the Forgotten Realms. Created by Ed Greenwood, who had been building this world in his imagination since he was a child, the Forgotten Realms became perhaps the most beloved campaign setting in all of D&D. It's a world of the wizard Elminster, of the city of Waterdeep, of the vast desert of Anarok, and the mysterious forests of Cormanther. Ed had been developing the realm since 1967, long before D&D even existed, dreaming of a place where magic was real and adventure waited around every corner. Now, let's journey into one of the game's most iconic locations, the Underdark. Deep beneath the surface world, far below even the deepest dungeons, lies a vast network of caverns and tunnels that spans entire continents. The Underdark is a realm of eternal darkness, where strange creatures have evolved without ever seeing the sun. It's here that you might encounter the Drow, the Dark Elves, a tragic and complex people who turned away from the surface world millennia ago. The Underdark appeared in 1978 in the adventure Descent into the Depths of the Earth, and it captured players' imaginations so thoroughly that it became an essential part of D&D mythology. Speaking of those dark elves, one character would rise from the Underdark to become perhaps the most famous D&D character ever created. His name is Drizzt Do'Urden, a Drow ranger with 2 magical scimitars and a heart that rejected the evil of his people. Created by author R.A. Salvatore, Drizzt first appeared in the 1988 novel The Crystal Shard. He wasn't even meant to be the main character. That was supposed to be a barbarian named Wulfgar. But Drizzt, with his internal struggle between the darkness of his heritage and his own moral code, resonated so deeply with readers that he became a legend. Over 30 novels have followed his adventures, and he remains a symbol of D&D itself. But D&D isn't just about fantasy worlds. It's also about rules, about mechanics, about how you actually play. And those rules have evolved over time through different editions. The game has gone through 5 major editions, each one reimagining how the game works while keeping its essential spirit alive. First edition AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, arrived in 1977 and 1978 with the Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, and Dungeon Master's Guide. Then came second edition in 1989, third edition in 2000, fourth edition in 2008, and finally fifth edition in 2014, which brought the game to new heights of popularity. Fifth edition, the version most people play today, was designed with a particular philosophy in mind. The designers wanted to capture what they called the spirit of D&D, something that had gotten lost in some of the more complex editions. They playtested it with over 175,000 players, the largest public playtest in gaming history, listening to feedback and refining the rules until they felt just right. The result was a game that was easier to learn but still deep enough to satisfy veteran players, a game that emphasized storytelling and character over complex mathematical calculations. Let's talk about inspiration, because D&D didn't spring from nowhere. Gary Gygax was deeply influenced by fantasy literature, and one author above all others shaped the game: J.R.R. Tolkien. The Lord of the Rings gave D&D its hobbits, originally called hobbits until the Tolkien estate objected, leading them to be renamed halflings, its elves, its dwarves, its orcs. The very concept of experience points and leveling up, of characters growing stronger through their adventures, echoes the journey of Frodo and his companions. Gary always acknowledged this debt, though he also drew from many other sources, from Robert E. Howard's Conan stories, from Fritz Leiber's Tales of Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, from the mythology of ancient civilizations. And here's something wonderful about the game's history. D&D created an entirely new kind of panic in the 1980s. Parents and religious groups became convinced that the game was dangerous, that it promoted occultism and devil worship. This became known as the Satanic Panic, a moral crisis that seems almost quaint now but was very real at the time. Churches held book burnings where D&D materials were destroyed. Schools banned the game. A television movie called Mazes and Monsters starring Tom Hanks portrayed the game as leading to mental breakdown. But the game survived and thrived because the people playing it knew the truth, that it was simply friends gathering together to tell stories and roll dice, no different from reading a fantasy novel or watching a movie, except that you were creating the story together. So now we've journeyed deeper into the tale, through Greyhawk and the Forgotten Realms, down into the Underdark where Drizzt was born, through 5 editions of Evolution, built on the shoulders of Tolkien and other literary giants, and surviving a panic that seems almost impossible to believe today. The story continues to unfold. Let's turn our attention now to the creatures, because what would a game called Dungeons and Dragons be without its dragons? In D&D, dragons aren't just massive flying lizards, they're intelligent, ancient, and categorized by color. There are the chromatic dragons, evil and destructive. Red dragons that breathe fire and hoard gold. White dragons of ice and fury. Black dragons lurking in fetid swamps. Green dragons weaving lies in forests. And blue dragons crackling with lightning in desert lands. And then there are the metallic dragons, noble and good. Gold dragons, wise and powerful. Silver dragons, compassionate and just. Bronze dragons guarding coastlines. copper dragons with their wit and humor, and brass dragons, talkative and curious. Each type has its own personality, its own motivations, its own place in the great tapestry of the game. But the most feared creature in all of D&D isn't a dragon. It's something far stranger. Picture a floating sphere, about the size of a large beach ball, with a huge central eye and a wide, toothy mouth. From its body sprout 10 eye stalks, each capable of firing a different magical ray. This is the Beholder, and it first appeared in the 1975 supplement Greyhawk. The Beholder is paranoid, believing itself to be the perfect form of life and viewing all other beholders as inferior. Its central eye projects an anti-magic cone, negating all magic in its gaze, while its eye stalks can disintegrate, charm, turn you to stone, or worse. The Beholder is so iconic, so uniquely D&D, that it's become one of the game's trademark monsters, appearing in countless adventures and nightmares. Now, imagine you're creating your first character, and you need to know how strong they are, how smart, how charismatic. D&D measures these qualities with 6 ability scores: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. These 6 attributes define every character in the game. Your strength determines whether you can break down that door or swing your sword with devastating force. Dexterity governs your agility and reflexes. Constitution measures your health and endurance. Intelligence represents reasoning and memory. Wisdom reflects your awareness and insight. And charisma. Charisma is your force of personality, your ability to lead, persuade, and inspire. In the original game, you rolled 3 6-sided dice for each ability, and whatever you got was what you got. No re-rolls, no adjustments. Your character's fate was in the hands of the dice from the very beginning. Let's talk about one of the most famous dungeons ever created, the Tomb of Horrors. Released in 1978 and written by Gary Gygax himself, this adventure was designed for one purpose: to kill characters. Gary created it specifically to challenge players who thought they'd mastered the game, players whose characters had become too powerful, too confident. The tomb is filled with instant death traps, false solutions, and cruel tricks. There's a hallway where simply touching the wrong wall means certain death. There's a sphere of annihilation disguised as a mouth, and if you're foolish enough to reach inside, your character simply ceases to exist. The demonic Asarak waits at the end, a floating skull with gemstone eyes and teeth, ready to trap your very soul. The Tomb of Horrors is legendary not just for its difficulty, but for teaching players that sometimes, in D&D, discretion truly is the valor of the brave. Magic in D&D follows a very particular structure, the spell slot system. A wizard can't simply cast spells endlessly. They must prepare specific spells each day, and each spell consumes a slot of the appropriate level. This system has its roots in Jack Vance's Dying Earth novels, where wizards would memorize spells that would vanish from their minds once cast, requiring them to study their spell books again to rememorize them. D&D adopted this Vancian magic system, and while it's evolved over the editions, the core concept remains. A first-level wizard might be able to cast only a single spell before needing to rest and study. But as they grow in power, they gain more slots, higher-level slots, and their magical repertoire expands until they can reshape reality itself. The humble D20, that 20-sided die we mentioned earlier, wasn't always the star of the show. In earlier editions, you used different dice for different things, percentile dice for certain checks, a d6 for initiative, various dice for damage. But when 3rd edition arrived in 2000, it introduced something revolutionary, the d20 system. Nearly everything in the game now resolved with a single d20 roll. Attack? Roll a d20. Check to climb a wall. Roll a d20. Try to persuade the guard. Roll a d20. This unified mechanic made the game smoother, more intuitive, and more accessible to new players. The d20 became not just a symbol, but the beating heart of gameplay itself. Here's a piece of history that feels almost impossible now. TSR, the company that published D&D, nearly went bankrupt in the late 1990s. Years of mismanagement, overexpansion, and market saturation had brought the company to its knees. In 1997, Wizards of the Coast, the company that made Magic, The Gathering, purchased TSR and saved Dungeons and Dragons from disappearing forever. It was a rescue mission that preserved not just a game, but an entire culture and art form. Wizards then did something remarkable. They released the D20 system under an open license, allowing other companies to create compatible games and content. This openness helped D&D grow in ways it never had before. Now, let's venture into one of the game's most beloved settings, Ravenloft. In 1983, the adventure Ravenloft introduced players to the vampire Count Strad von Zarovich and his cursed domain of Barovia. This wasn't the typical dungeon crawl. It was gothic horror, a realm of myths and dread where a tragic villain ruled over his land, forever seeking a reincarnation of his lost love. Castle Ravenloft itself was generated partly randomly, with a deck of cards determining where key items and encounters would be found, making each playthrough unique. The adventure was so successful that Ravenloft expanded into an entire campaign setting, a demiplane of dread where dark lords ruled domains shaped by their sins and sorrows. And speaking of decks of cards, D&D has a magical artifact so dangerous, so unpredictable, that using it can change everything. The Deck of Many Things first appeared in the original Dungeon Master's Guide in 1979. It's a set of magical cards, and when you draw one, reality itself bends. You might gain vast wealth, a castle, or a loyal fighter to serve you. Or you might lose your soul, be imprisoned in an extra-dimensional space, or have death itself appear before you as an avatar that you must defeat in combat. The deck represents the ultimate gamble, pure chaos. The knowledge that sometimes in D&D, as in life, fortune can change in an instant. Soft breath, contemplative pause. So we've met chromatic and metallic dragons, faced the terrible beholder, learned about the 6 ability scores that define us, survived the deadly tomb of horrors, understood the spell slot system born from Jack Vance's imagination, unified our roles with the D20, witnessed Wizards of the Coast save the game from extinction, entered the myths of Ravenloft, and glimpsed the terrible power of the Deck of Many Things. Our journey through these 100 facts is taking shape. Let's explore the races, the different peoples who inhabit these worlds of fantasy. When D&D began, you could play as a human, an elf, a dwarf, or a halfling. These were the original 4, borrowed from Tolkien's Legendarium. But as the game grew, so did the options. Half-elves appeared, children of 2 worlds belonging fully to neither. Half-orcs emerged, often struggling against prejudice, and their own dual nature. Gnomes arrived, small tinkerers and illusionists with a love of jokes and invention. And then came the Dragonborn, humanoid dragons walking upright, their breath weapons echoing their draconic ancestry. Tieflings entered the game, humans touched by infernal heritage, with horns and tails marking their connection to darker realms. Each race brought new stories, new perspectives, new ways to see these fantasy worlds. Now picture yourself not in a dungeon, but in a city, a massive, impossible city. This is Sigil, the City of Doors, introduced in 1994 with the Planescape campaign setting. Sigil sits at the center of the multiverse, atop an infinitely tall spire, shaped like the inside of a torus, a city on the inner surface of a ring. Here, portals to every plane of existence can be found, marked by doorways that might lead anywhere. The city is ruled by the mysterious Lady of Pain, a being so powerful that even gods fear her, who drifts silently through the streets with blades floating around her head. Planescape asks philosophical questions, exploring belief and reality, showing that D&D could be more than just treasure and monsters. It could be profound. Let's talk about alignment, that famous grid that has sparked countless debates. In D&D, every character and creature exists somewhere on two axes, the law-chaos axis and the good-evil axis. This creates 9 alignments: lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, lawful neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral, lawful evil, neutral evil, and chaotic evil. A lawful good paladin believes in order, justice, and protecting the innocent. A chaotic good rogue might break laws to help people, trusting their own moral compass over society's rules. A lawful evil tyrant maintains order through oppression and cruelty. And a chaotic neutral character, well, they follow their whims, unpredictable and free. The alignment system has evolved over the editions, sometimes expanded, sometimes simplified, but it remains a touchstone for understanding character motivations. In 2008, 4th edition D&D tried something bold and different. It redesigned the game from the ground up, making it more tactical, more like a board game with miniatures and grids. Every class had powers that recharged in different ways, at-will powers you could use endlessly, encounter powers that recharged after a short rest, and daily powers that could be used only once before you needed to sleep. The game was balanced, carefully structured, with every class having clear roles: defender, striker, leader, or controller. Some players loved this clarity and tactical depth. Others felt it had strayed too far from D&D's roots, becoming too game-like, losing some of the improvisational storytelling magic. 4th edition taught the designers important lessons about what players wanted, lessons that would shape 5th edition's return to form. Let's journey now to the elemental planes, realms of pure primordial force. The plane of fire, an endless inferno where the very ground burns, and Efreet build their brass cities in lakes of magma. The plane of water, a boundless ocean where tritons and marids dwell in coral palaces. The plane of air, where you might fall forever through endless sky, or find floating earth modes held aloft by ancient magic. And the plane of earth, solid stone in every direction, where tunnels must be carved to move and down mine for gems in compressed caverns. These elemental planes represent existence in its purest forms, and traveling to them means adapting to realities where the rules of the material world no longer apply. Here's something many people don't know. The iconic D&D experience point system, where you gain XP by defeating monsters and completing challenges, wasn't always the only way to advance your character. In early editions, most of your experience actually came from treasure. Gold pieces recovered from dungeons translated directly into experience points. A monster might give you a few hundred XP, but the hoard it was guarding could be worth thousands. This created an interesting dynamic. Sometimes the smartest players would find ways to steal the treasure without fighting the dragon at all. Combat was dangerous, risky, a thing to be avoided when possible. The treasure was the goal, and experience was the reward for clever thinking, not just successful violence. Let's talk about multi-classing, a concept that lets your character be more than just one thing. Perhaps you start as a fighter, learning the ways of combat, but then discover a talent for magic and begin training as a wizard. Or maybe you're a rogue who finds faith and starts taking levels in cleric. In the original game, multi-classing was limited to certain race and class combinations. Elves could be fighter magic users, for example. But as the game evolved, particularly in 3rd edition, multi-classing became widely available, allowing players to create unique combinations. A paladin warlock might struggle with the conflict between their holy oath and their pact with an otherworldly patron. A barbarian bard could be a skald, a warrior poet singing songs of their own mighty deeds. The possibilities became nearly endless. One of the most memorable moments in D&D history happened in 2014, when Wizards of the Coast released the 5th edition starter set. It included an adventure called Lost Mine of Phandelver, designed specifically to teach new players and dungeon masters how to play. This adventure was so well crafted, so perfectly paced, that it introduced millions of people to D&D. It began simply, escort a wagon to the town of Phandalin. But that simple mission unfolds into a story of goblin raids, mysterious cults, ancient magic, and a lost dwarven mine filled with danger and wonder. More people have probably played through the first goblin ambush in Lost Mine of Phandelver than any other single encounter in D&D's 50-year history. And speaking of that history, let's acknowledge a beautiful truth. D&D has always been about bringing people together. From those first games in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, to kitchen tables around the world, to online platforms where people connect across continents, the game creates community. It's been played in college dorm rooms and nursing homes, in libraries and living rooms, by children discovering imagination and adults rediscovering wonder. It's a game that requires no athletic ability, no expensive equipment, no particular background. All you need is imagination, some friends, and a willingness to say yes, and to whatever comes next. So we've met the diverse races from Dragonborn to Tieflings, visited Sigil at the center of the multiverse, debated the 9 alignments, learned from 4th edition's bold experiment, traveled to the elemental planes, discovered that treasure once mattered more than combat, explored the art of multi-classing, taught millions through the Lost Mine of Phandelver, and remembered that above all, D&D is about bringing people together. The tapestry grows richer with each thread. Let's turn our attention to one of the game's most versatile classes, the Bard. In early editions, becoming a Bard was incredibly difficult. You had to start as a fighter, then switch to become a thief, and only after advancing in both could you finally become a Bard. It was a prestige, a reward for dedication. But as the game evolved, Bards became their own class from the beginning, masters of music, magic, and lore. They're the storytellers within the story, weaving spells through song, inspiring allies with a rousing ballad, cutting down enemies with vicious mockery. A bard's power comes from performance, from art itself becoming magic. They can play a lute in a tavern one night and save the world with that same song the next. Now imagine a place where the dead don't rest, the negative energy plane, the source of all undeath in the multiverse. This plane exists as an absolute void, draining life and light from anything that enters it. It's from this dark realm that necromancers draw their power, animating corpses and binding souls. The negative energy plane has a mirror, the positive energy plane, a realm of pure, overwhelming life force so intense that it can destroy living beings through an excess of vitality, burning them out like a candle with too much oxygen. These planes represent the duality of existence itself, the balance between creation and entropy, life and death, being and nothingness. Let's talk about critical hits, those moments of triumph when everything goes perfectly. When you roll a natural 20 on an attack roll, you score a critical hit. The rules for what this means have varied over the editions, but the essence remains the same. Something extraordinary happens. Maybe you roll double damage dice. Maybe you automatically hit regardless of the enemy's armor. That moment when the die shows 20 and everyone at the table erupts in celebration. That's pure D&D magic. And conversely, when you roll a natural one, a critical failure or fumble, your sword might slip from your grip. Your spell might fizzle. Your smooth words might come out as embarrassing gibberish. These moments of perfect success and catastrophic failure create stories that players remember for decades. In 1989, TSR published a series of adventure modules set in a war-torn world unlike any D&D had seen before. This was Dragonlance, a setting where dragons had returned after centuries of absence, where the world itself was recovering from a great cataclysm. But what made Dragonlance special wasn't just the setting, it was the characters. The heroes of the Lance, led by figures like Tanis Half-Elven, Raceland Magir the Dark-Robed Mage, and Sturm Brightblade the Knight, had their own story told through a series of novels by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. These weren't just adventures you played. They were stories you read, characters you came to love. Dragonlance blurred the line between game and literature, showing that D&D could tell epic stories with the scope and emotional depth of the best fantasy novels. Here's something that makes D&D unique among games. Death isn't always permanent. If your character falls in battle, there are spells that can bring you back. Revivify can return someone who died within the last minute, pulling them back from the threshold. Raise Dead works on those who've been gone for up to 10 days. Resurrection can recover someone dead for a century. And True Resurrection can restore someone even if their body has been completely destroyed, creating them anew from nothing. But these spells come at a cost, requiring expensive material components like diamonds worth thousands of gold pieces. Death still matters, still carries weight, but it's not always the end. This creates interesting dynamics. Should you play it safe, or take risks knowing resurrection is possible? How much is your character's life worth in gold? Let's venture into the Feywild, a parallel dimension that mirrors the material world, but transforms it into something strange and beautiful. Time moves differently here. A night spent dancing with pixies might mean years have passed in the mortal world. The Archfey rule domains within this realm, powerful beings like Titania the Summer Queen and the Queen of Air and Darkness. Everything in the Feywild is more vibrant colors, more intense emotions, more dangerous beauty. A simple forest becomes a woods of silver trees with singing leaves. A pond becomes a mirror that shows not your reflection, but your heart's desire. The Feywild appears in folklore and fairy tales from cultures around the world, and D&D captured that otherworldly magic, that sense that you've stepped sideways into a dream. Now, let's talk about skills, those specific areas of expertise that define what your character is particularly good at. In 5th edition, there are 18 skills, from acrobatics to survival, each tied to one of the 6 ability scores. Your rogue might have expertise in stealth and sleight of hand, able to move unseen and pick pockets with supernatural grace. Your wizard might excel at arcana and history, their years of study paying off. Your barbarian might be skilled in athletics and intimidation, using raw strength and presence to overcome obstacles. The skill system lets you define not just what class your character is, but who they are as a person. 2 fighters might both be warriors, but one knows courtly etiquette and plays chess, while the other can track prey through any terrain and survive in the wilderness. Here's a piece of D&D lore that spans the entire cosmology: the Blood War, an eternal conflict between devils and demons. Devils are lawful evil, following strict hierarchies in the 9 hells, honoring contracts and working through systems of power. Demons are chaotic evil, rampaging through the abyss's infinite layers in hordes of destruction. These 2 forces of evil have fought each other since the dawn of creation in a war so vast and terrible that it keeps both sides occupied. Some say this is the only thing protecting the mortal realms. If the Blood War ever ended, the winner would turn its full attention to conquering everything else. It's a dark sort of balance, evil consuming evil, while mortals live in the shadows of their conflict. And let's not forget one of D&D's most important tools, the battle mat. While you can play D&D entirely through imagination and description, many groups use maps and miniatures to visualize combat. The Chessex battle mat, introduced in the 1990s, became a staple of gaming tables. It's a vinyl mat marked with a grid, and you can draw on it with wet erase markers to sketch out dungeons, forests, or battlefields. Miniatures representing heroes and monsters stand on the squares, moving through tactical space. Some people craft elaborate 3D terrain. Others use simple tokens. Some play on elaborate digital platforms. But that basic battle mat, with its 1-inch squares and erasable surface, has facilitated countless adventures, turning abstract combat into a visual, tactical experience. So we've explored the evolution of the bard from prestige class to performer, touched the void of the negative energy plane and the burning light of its positive mirror, celebrated critical successes and fumbles, journeyed through Dragonlance with the heroes of the Lance, learned that death can be reversed with diamonds and dedication, stepped sideways into the Feywild's dangerous beauty, defined ourselves through 18 skills, witnessed the eternal blood war between devils and demons, and laid out our battle mat to visualize the conflict. Our collection of facts continues to grow, each one a window into this vast game. Let's talk about a concept that's central to the D&D experience, the saving throw. When something terrible is about to happen to your character, When a dragon breathes fire or a wizard casts a spell at you, you make a saving throw to resist or reduce the effect. Roll a d20, add your modifiers, and hope you beat the difficulty. In 5th edition, there are 6 types of saving throws, 1 for each ability score. A dexterity save lets you dodge out of the way. A constitution save helps you endure poison or disease. A wisdom save might let you resist an enchantment trying to control your mind. These moments of rolling to save yourself create tension and drama. Will you shrug off the effect, or will you succumb? The die tumbles and your fate hangs in the balance. Now, let's journey to a place of infinite knowledge. Candlekeep, the great library fortress that has appeared in D&D lore since the earliest days of the Forgotten Realms. Rising from the cliffs along the Sword Coast, Candlekeep houses the largest collection of written works in all of Faerun. To enter, you must donate a book the library doesn't already possess, and given that Candlekeep has been collecting for over 800 years, that's no small feat inside its walls. Scholars known as the Avowed dedicate their lives to preserving knowledge. The monks who protect the library are formidable defenders, and the wards are ancient and powerful. Candlekeep represents something beautiful about D&D. The idea that knowledge itself is treasure, that a rare book might be worth more than a chest of gold. Let's explore one of the most beloved character classes, the Ranger. Rangers are warriors of the wilderness, equally at home tracking prey through forests or battling monsters in the wild. They have favored enemies, creatures they've studied and learned to fight with particular effectiveness. They have favored terrains where they cannot be lost and can move stealthily even at normal pace. But perhaps most iconic is the Ranger's companion. In many editions, Rangers could bond with animal allies, wolves or hawks or bears who fought alongside them. The most famous Ranger, Drizzt Do'Urden, had his magical panther Genhuivar, summoned from a figurine. The Ranger embodies the fantasy of being one with nature, a guardian of the borderlands between civilization and the untamed wild. Here's a fascinating piece of D&D's mechanics, the concept of advantage and disadvantage, introduced in 5th edition. When you have advantage, you roll 2d20s and take the higher result. When you have disadvantage, you roll 2d20s and take the lower result. This simple mechanic replaced dozens of situational modifiers from earlier editions. Fighting in darkness? Disadvantage. Attacking an enemy from hiding? Advantage. The system is elegant, intuitive, and makes the game flow smoothly. That moment when you roll 2 dice and both come up high feels like destiny favoring you. And when both come up low, well, sometimes fate has other plans. Let's talk about magical items, those wondrous objects that define so many characters and stories. There's the Vorpal Sword, which can decapitate enemies with a lucky strike. The Bag of Holding, a simple sack that contains an extra-dimensional space, able to carry far more than should be possible. The Cloak of Invisibility, letting its wearer vanish from sight. The Rod of Lordly Might, a weapon that transforms into different forms. The Apparatus of Qualish, a magical lobster-like vehicle that walks along the ocean floor. These items have histories, legends, quirks. A sword might be sentient with its own personality and goals. A ring might be cursed, granting power at a terrible price. Magical items aren't just equipment. They're part of the story, sometimes driving the narrative as much as the characters themselves. Now, picture a city floating in the sky, held aloft by an ancient methaller, a massive magical artifact. This is a Netherese flying city, remnants of an empire that fell thousands of years ago in the Forgotten Realms. The Netherese were masters of magic beyond anything the current age can achieve. They're archwizards able to cast spells that would be considered impossible today. They created floating cities, reshaped reality, challenged the gods themselves. But their hubris led to catastrophe. An archwizard named Karsus tried to become a god by stealing the divine portfolio of magic itself. For one brief moment, he succeeded, and in that moment, all magic everywhere stopped working. The flying cities fell from the sky in what became known as Karsus's folly. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of reaching too far, of ambition unchecked by wisdom. Let's discuss inspiration, a mechanic in 5th edition that rewards good role-playing. When you do something particularly clever, funny, or in character, your dungeon master might award you inspiration. With inspiration, you can give yourself advantage on a roll at a crucial moment. It's a simple system, but it encourages players to think like their characters, to make decisions based on personality rather than pure optimization. Your paladin might charge into danger to protect innocence even when it's tactically questionable, and that heroic choice might earn inspiration that saves their life in the next battle. Inspiration is D&D acknowledging that the best moments often come from character, not mechanics. Here's something that changed D&D forever. The introduction of the Warlock class in 3rd edition supplement books, though it truly came into its own in 5th edition. Warlocks gain their magic not through study or divine blessing, but through a pact with a powerful entity. Your patron might be an archfey, granting you whimsical and enchanting powers, or a fiend, offering dark gifts at the cost of your soul, or a great old one, an incomprehensible being from beyond reality whose very existence challenges sanity. The warlock represents making a deal, trading something precious for power and living with the consequences. Unlike wizards who study for years, warlocks receive power as a gift, but gifts from such beings always come with strings attached. And let's visit one of D&D's most tragic settings. Dark Sunday released in 1991. Dark Sun presented a world utterly unlike the typical fantasy realm. Athos is a dying desert world where metal is scarce, where magic draws life from the earth itself, turning fertile land to ash. There are no gods. They've abandoned this world or never existed here. Mighty sorcerer kings rule city-states as tyrants, while in the wastes, survival is a daily struggle. Elves are desert runners and traders, not forest dwellers. Halflings are feral cannibals, not cheerful farmers. Even the halflings are different. Wait, I mentioned halflings twice. Even the dragons are different. They're not born but made, transformations that sorcerer kings undergo through terrible magic. Dark Sun showed that D&D could be harsh, alien, post-apocalyptic, challenging everything players thought they knew about fantasy. So we've rolled saving throws against deadly effects, sought knowledge in Candlekeep's ancient halls, ranged through the wilderness with animal companions, rolled with advantage and disadvantage, discovered magical items from the mundane to the legendary, witnessed the fall of Netherese flying cities through Karsus's folly, earned inspiration through roleplay, made pacts as warlocks with otherworldly patrons, and survive the harsh deserts of Dark Sun's dying world. More than halfway through our 100 facts, the story deepens still. Let's talk about a fundamental part of D&D that happens before the adventure even begins: character creation. The moment when you decide who you'll be in this imaginary world is special, almost sacred. You might roll dice to determine your ability scores, or use a point-buy system, or an array of standard numbers. You choose your race and class, but then comes the real magic: deciding who this person is. What's their name? Where do they come from? What do they fear? What do they dream of? Some players write pages of backstory, crafting rich histories. Others discover their character through play, learning who they are by the choices they make. There's no wrong way to do it. Every character starts as potential, and through play, they become real. Now, let's venture into one of the most dangerous places in all the multiverse: the Abyss. Unlike the Nine Hells with their ordered hierarchies, the Abyss is infinite chaos, containing countless layers, each more horrible than the last. There's the plane of infinite portals, the first layer, where doorways to other layers open and close randomly. There's Azagrat, the triple realm ruled by the demon lord Graziti. There's the layer that's an endless web, domain of Lolth, the demon queen of spiders who corrupted the drow elves. Each layer reflects its demon lord's nature, twisted into landscapes of nightmare. The Abyss is entropy given form, chaos made manifest, a place where reality itself frays at the edges. Let's discuss one of D&D's most versatile mechanics: ritual casting. Certain spells can be cast as rituals, taking an extra 10 minutes but not consuming a spell slot. This simple rule opens up so much possibility. A wizard can detect magic as a ritual, carefully examining a room for enchantments without expending resources. A cleric can cast ceremony, performing marriages or funerals with proper reverence. A druid might speak with animals, having a conversation with the local wildlife to gather information. Ritual casting acknowledges that not all magic is for combat, that sometimes magic is a tool for exploration, investigation, or simply making the world more wondrous. Here's a piece of D&D history that shows how the game has grown: the introduction of Eberron in 2004. Created by Keith Baker, Eberron is a setting that asks, what if magic was technology? In this world, there's a continent-spanning magical railroad called the Lightning Rail. Airships float through the sky, bound by elemental engines. Common people use magic items in their daily lives, sending stones for communication, ever-burning torches for light. The last war ended just 2 years ago, leaving nations scarred and a magical wasteland called the Mournland, where an entire nation was destroyed in a single day by unknown catastrophe. Eberron showed that D&D could embrace different tones, could be noir mystery or pulp adventure, could blend magic and industry into something new. Let's talk about hit points, that abstract measure of how much punishment your character can take. When you're first created, you have a certain number of hit points based on your class and constitution. Each time you level up, you gain more. But what do hit points really represent? They're not just how much physical damage you can endure. They're stamina, luck, skill at turning lethal blows into glancing strikes, divine protection, sheer determination. When you have 1 hit point left, you're not necessarily covered in wounds. You're exhausted, pushed to your absolute limit. And when you reach 0, you fall unconscious and begin making death-saving throws, hovering between life and death. This abstraction allows heroes to be heroic, to fight through incredible odds, while still maintaining the constant threat of mortality. Now, picture a place between places, the astral plane, a realm of thought and psychic energy, where travelers appear as they see themselves. Here, there's no gravity, no up or down. You move by willing yourself to move. Time doesn't pass, you don't age, don't need to eat or drink or sleep. Floating through the silver void, you might encounter Githyanki warriors riding red dragons or stumble upon the corpse of a dead god, a massive body floating through eternity, sometimes inhabited by entire civilizations living on the god's remains. The astral plane is how travelers journey between the outer planes, but it's also a place of meditation and enlightenment where the mind is all that matters. Let's discuss one of the game's most important concepts, the action economy. In combat, each character gets one action, one bonus action, and movement on their turn. Understanding this economy is crucial. A fighter might use their action to attack, their bonus action to make an additional attack if they have the right abilities, and their movement to position themselves strategically. A wizard might cast a spell as their action and nothing else. The most powerful characters aren't necessarily those with the highest damage. They're the ones who can do multiple things in a turn, who can affect the battlefield in various ways. This is why legendary creatures get legendary actions, allowing them to act even on other characters' turns. It helps balance a single monster against multiple heroes. Here's something wonderful about D&D's evolution: the inclusion of more diverse character options in recent years. 5th edition introduced a wider range of backgrounds, acknowledging that not every adventurer comes from the same place or circumstances. You might be a folk hero, beloved by your community, or a criminal with contacts in the underworld, or a sage who spent years in libraries and monasteries, or an entertainer used to performing and traveling. These backgrounds give you proficiencies, languages, and features, but more importantly, they give you context, a place in the world. They help answer the question, who were you before you became an adventurer? And that answer shapes everything that follows. Let's visit one more memorable location: Barovia, that cursed land we touched on earlier when discussing Ravenloft, but there's more to say. Barovia is surrounded by deadly mists that turn back travelers who try to leave and deposit new victims who wander in. The sun rarely shines through the perpetual clouds. The land itself seems to conspire with Count Strahd, its immortal vampire lord. But what makes Barovia truly tragic is that it's a reflection of Strahd himself. His domain is shaped by his sins, his regrets, his obsessions. He murdered his brother Sergei to claim his brother's bride, Tatiana, but she threw herself from the castle walls rather than be with him. Now Strahd is cursed to watch as Tatiana is reincarnated again and again, and each time he tries to win her, she dies or escapes, perpetuating his torment across centuries. Barovia isn't just a location. It's a prison made of guilt and desire, and Strahd is both its warden and its prisoner. So we've created characters from dice rolls and dreams, descended into the infinite chaos of the abyss, cast spells as rituals without consuming our power, explored Eberron where magic became technology, understood that hit points represent more than wounds, floated through the timeless astral plane, managed our actions in combat like precious resources, chosen backgrounds that define who we were before adventure called, and witnessed Barovia's tragic cycle of love and death. The journey continues, each fact a stepping stone across this vast landscape. Let's talk about a class that walks the line between devotion and power, the Paladin. In early editions, Paladins had strict requirements. They had to be lawful good, following a rigid code of conduct. They couldn't own more than a certain amount of treasure. They had to tithe to their church. Breaking these strictures meant losing their powers, becoming a fallen paladin. But as the game evolved, particularly in 5th edition, paladins became more flexible. Now they take sacred oaths, the oath of devotion for traditional knights, the oath of vengeance for those seeking justice at any cost, the oath of the ancients for those who protect nature and joy. Some paladins even become oath breakers, having broken their vows but retaining twisted versions of their powers. The paladin represents dedication made manifest, belief given the power to smite evil and heal the wounded. Now, let's explore a concept that makes D&D feel alive: random encounter tables. A dungeon master can roll dice to determine what the party encounters while traveling through the wilderness or resting in a dungeon. You might encounter nothing, or friendly travelers, or a wandering monster, or something stranger. These tables create unpredictability, the sense that the world exists beyond the planned adventure. The original 1974 rules included encounter tables, and they've remained part of the game ever since. That tension when the DM rolls dice behind their screen, when you hear the dice clatter and see their expression change, you know something is coming. But what? Random encounters remind us that not everything is a carefully crafted story beat. Sometimes things just happen. Let's discuss a mechanic that's caused endless debates: the surprise round. In earlier editions, if one group ambushed another, they got a free round of actions while their victims couldn't act. 5th edition simplified this. Now, surprise creatures can't move or take actions on their first turn and can't take reactions until that turn ends. It's more streamlined, but the concept remains: being caught unaware is dangerous. A group of assassins might drop half the party before the fight truly begins. Or clever players might scout ahead, positioning themselves perfectly before springing their trap. Surprise rewards planning, caution, and clever thinking. It makes that rogue stealth skill suddenly crucial to survival. Here's a beautiful piece of D&D lore: the concept of the prime material plane, the normal world where most adventures take place. This plane is the center, the baseline of reality. All around it are the other planes, the inner planes of elements, the outer planes of belief and alignment, the transitive planes like the astral and ethereal that connect everything. But the prime material isn't just one world, it's infinite worlds, infinite versions of reality. Your campaign might take place on Toril, home of the Forgotten Realms, or Kryn, the world of Dragonlance, or Earth, the world of Greyhawk, or a world entirely of your dungeon master's creation. Each is its own prime material plane, and the cosmology extends from there. This concept allows every campaign to be unique while still being part of a greater multiverse. Let's talk about something every D&D player experiences: character death. Despite all the resurrection spells we discussed earlier, sometimes a character truly dies. Maybe the party can't afford the diamond for resurrection. Maybe they're too far from anyone who can cast the spell. Maybe the player decides it's the right ending for their story. Character death is always emotional. You've invested hours, maybe years, into this person. You know their voice, their mannerisms, their relationships. But death also creates powerful stories. The sacrifice play that saves the party, the tragic fall to an ancient curse, the heroic last stand. And then comes the bittersweet process of creating a new character, introducing them to the party, building new relationships. In D&D, as in life, endings make room for new beginnings. Now, picture a city of brass and flame. The city of brass, capital of the Efreet on the elemental plane of fire. The streets are brass, heated until they glow. Slaves from across the multiverse labor in markets where anything can be bought or sold. The Grand Sultan of the Efreet rules from his palace, surrounded by nobles who scheme and plot. Here, water is more valuable than gold, ice worth more than diamonds. The city floats on a sea of magma, and those without resistance to fire must find protection or suffer. But if you can survive the heat, if you can navigate the politics and avoid being enslaved yourself, the city of brass offers wonders found nowhere else. Magic items of incredible power, knowledge from 1,000 worlds, passage to realms that cannot be reached any other way. Let's discuss ability checks, the basic mechanic that resolves most non-combat actions in 5th edition. You want to climb a wall. Make a strength athletics. Check. You want to lie convincingly. Make a charisma deception. Check. You roll a d20. Add the relevant ability modifier and any proficiency bonus, and compare it to a target number called the difficulty class, or DC. Easy tasks might be DC 10, while nearly impossible tasks might be DC 25 or higher. This simple system, roll plus modifiers versus DC, handles everything from picking locks to recalling ancient lore to tracking a creature through the forest. It's elegant in its simplicity, and it means that almost any action you can imagine has a way to be resolved. Here's something that shows D&D's incredible staying power. The game has been continuously in print and actively played for 50 years. Since 1974, through 5 editions and countless supplements, through ownership changes and market shifts, through periods of controversy and celebration, D&D has never disappeared. There have been times when it seemed like the game might fade away, particularly in the late 1990s when TSR was struggling, but it always survived. And now, in the 2020s, D&D is more popular than ever, played by millions of people worldwide, streamed online, referenced in popular culture. That 50-year legacy represents countless stories told, friendships formed, imaginations ignited. It's a testament to the power of collaborative storytelling, of gathering with friends to create something together. Let's end this segment with a class that embodies raw, primal power, the barbarian. Barbarians rage, entering a state of fury that makes them stronger, tougher, more dangerous. While raging, they deal extra damage, resist physical harm, and can perform incredible feats of strength. They might come from frozen tundras or scorching deserts, from nomadic tribes or isolated mountains. Some barbarians follow the path of the berserker, giving themselves over to fury completely. Others walk the path of the totem warrior, channeling animal spirits, the bear's toughness, the eagle's mobility, the wolf's tactical instincts. The barbarian is proof that you don't need magic or complex tactics to be powerful. Sometimes, righteous fury and an axe are all you need. So we've taken sacred oaths as paladins, rolled on random encounter tables where anything might happen, achieved surprise through careful planning, understood the prime material plane as the center of infinite worlds, experienced the weight of character death and rebirth, visited the city of brass on seas of magma, resolved our actions through ability checks against difficulty classes, celebrated 50 continuous years of D&D's existence, and raged as barbarians channeling primal fury. We're approaching the end of our 100 facts, but the story of D&D never truly ends. Let's talk about something that makes D&D unique in the modern gaming landscape. It's not about winning. There's no victory condition, no final score, no way to beat Dungeons and Dragons. Success is measured in stories told, challenges overcome, characters developed, friendships deepened. You might complete a quest or defeat a villain, but that's just one chapter in an ongoing story. Some campaigns last for years, watching characters grow from inexperienced novices to legendary heroes who reshape the world. Others are short adventures, contain stories that end when the tale is told. The goal isn't to win, it's to experience the journey together, to see what happens next, to discover who your character becomes through the choices they make. Now, let's explore a concept that's been part of D&D since the beginning, encumbrance. How much can your character actually carry? In early editions, this was tracked meticulously. Every sword had a weight. Every coin added up, and carrying too much slowed you down or prevented movement entirely. Some groups love this realism, carefully managing their equipment. Others found it tedious and ignored it. 5th edition offers a simplified variant rule. You can carry a number of pounds equal to your strength score times 15. Most groups don't track it at all unless it becomes relevant. But there's something satisfying about those moments when encumbrance matters, when the party finds a huge hoard of treasure and realizes they can't possibly carry it all, when they must choose between the gold coins or the magical artifacts, when clever thinking about weight and capacity becomes part of the puzzle. Let's discuss one of D&D's most atmospheric elements, light and darkness. In a dungeon deep underground, in ancient ruins, in the depths of night, seeing becomes a challenge. Humans need light sources, torches that last an hour, lanterns that burn oil, magical light from spells. But many races have dark vision, able to see in darkness as if it were dim light. This creates interesting dynamics. The elf scout can see perfectly while sneaking ahead, but the human wizard needs a light spell, potentially alerting enemies. Darkness isn't just absence of light in D&D. It's a tactical consideration, an atmospheric tool, a reminder that not all heroes perceive the world the same way. Here's a piece of D&D culture that emerged in the 2010s and changed everything: actual play streams and podcasts. Shows like Critical Role, where professional voice actors play D&D and stream it on Twitch, introduced millions of people to the game who had never considered trying it. The Adventure Zone brought comedic storytelling and emotional depth to podcasting. Dimension 20 showcased D&D as high-production entertainment. These shows did something remarkable. They demonstrated that watching other people play D&D could be genuinely compelling entertainment. They showed the humor, the heart, the improvisation, the collaborative creativity. They made D&D accessible, demystifying the game and inspiring a whole new generation to gather their friends and start their own campaigns. Let's talk about a concept that causes both excitement and dread: level advancement. As your character completes adventures and gains experience points, they level up, becoming more powerful. You gain more hit points, new abilities, higher level spells. A first level wizard has 3 spell slots and knows 6 spells. A 20th level wizard is essentially a demigod, capable of rewriting reality, stopping time, or traveling between planes of existence at will. This progression is core to D&D's appeal. The sense of growth, of earning power through experience, of becoming the hero you always imagined. But it also means the game changes dramatically at different levels. Low-level play is gritty, dangerous, grounded. High-level play is epic, world-shaking, fantastical. A campaign that spans from level 1 to level 20 is a journey from humble beginnings to mythic destiny. Now, picture a place of perfect order. Mechanus, the plane of law, a realm of massive interlocking gears that turn with mathematical precision. Here dwell the Modrons, creatures of absolute law. Geometric beings organized in a perfect hierarchy, from monodrones to the supreme hierarch Primus. Modrons have no individuality, no creativity, no deviation from their programmed purpose. Every 17,000 years, they embark on the Great Modron March, leaving Mechanus, and traveling through the planes in an orderly procession that no one fully understands. Mechanus represents the opposite of the Abyss, where the Abyss is infinite chaos. Mechanus is absolute order, both extremes equally alien to mortal comprehension. Let's discuss something that happens at every table: house rules. No two groups play D&D exactly the same way. One DM might allow players to heal fully after a long rest. Another might make healing slower, grittier, more dangerous. Some tables ignore material components for spells. Others track every copper piece and spell component carefully. Some allow critical hits on skill checks. Others stick strictly to the written rules. House rules let groups customize the game to match their preferred style. More heroic or more realistic. More tactical or more narrative. More comedic or more serious. The flexibility to modify rules is a feature, not a bug. It's your game at your table, and you can make it work the way you want it to work. Here's a fascinating aspect of D&D's magic system: concentration. Many powerful spells require concentration, meaning you can only maintain one concentration spell at a time. If you take damage while concentrating, you must make a Constitution save, or lose the spell. This creates meaningful choices. Your wizard could cast haste on the fighter, making them incredibly fast and deadly, but then they can't also cast fly on themselves or hold person on the enemy caster. Concentration prevents spellcasters from stacking every buff and control spell simultaneously, creating balance and tactical decision-making. Do you maintain the wall of fire that's blocking enemies, or drop it to cast polymorph and turn your ally into a giant ape? These choices define combat encounters. Let's visit one more iconic location: Waterdeep, the City of Splendors, the greatest city on the Sword Coast of the Forgotten Realms. With over 1 million inhabitants, Waterdeep is a place of intrigue, adventure, and opportunity. The city is protected by the Black Staff, an archmage of incredible power, and governed by the masked lords, nobles whose identities are secret. In Waterdeep, you might rub shoulders with the richest merchants in Faerun, delve into Undermountain, the massive dungeon beneath the city created by the mad wizard Helaster, or get involved in the schemes of the Zentrim, Harpers, or other secret societies. Waterdeep represents the urban adventure, mysteries in fog-shrouded streets, politics and intrigue, treasures hidden in plain sight. So we've understood that D&D has no winning condition, only stories shared, managed our encumbrance when every pound matters, navigated light and darkness with torches and dark vision. Watched actual play shows transform D&D into entertainment for millions, leveled our characters from humble adventurers to legendary heroes, visited mechanists where perfect order turns like clockwork, created house rules that make the game our own, concentrated on one spell while letting others fade, and explored. Waterdeep, the city of splendors. Just a few more facts remain in our journey of 100. Let's talk about a concept that defines high-level play: epic boons and artifacts. When characters reach the highest levels, normal magic items no longer challenge or excite them. They might seek artifacts: the Eye of Vecna, which grants terrible power at the cost of replacing your eye with this withered organ; the Wand of Orcus, a skull-topped rod that can slay with a touch; the deck of many things we mentioned earlier. Or they might receive epic boons, blessings from gods that grant abilities beyond normal class features. They might become immortal, able to return from death without aid. They might gain immunity to disease and poison. They might be able to cast 9th level spells without consuming spell slots. These rewards represent achieving mythic status, becoming legends that will be remembered for millennia. Now, picture a realm of eternal twilight, the Shadowfell, a dark mirror of the prime material plane. Here, colors are muted, emotions are dulled, hope fades to despair. The Shadowfell overlaps the material world, and in places where tragedy has occurred, where death lingers, the barrier between them thins. The Raven Queen makes her domain here, goddess of death and fate, collecting the memories of the dead. Creatures of shadow dwell in this realm: shadow dragons, dark ones, the sorrowful undead who cannot find rest. But the Shadowfell isn't purely evil, it's simply dark, melancholic, a place of endings and quiet sorrow. Some find solace here, in the absence of false cheer, in the honest acknowledgement of loss. Let's discuss something that separates good DMs from great ones: improvisation. No matter how much you prepare, players will always surprise you. They'll befriend the villain you planned as an enemy. They'll ignore the main plot to investigate a random NPC you mentioned in passing. They'll come up with a solution you never considered, using spells in creative ways, or talking their way past obstacles you designed for combat. The best dungeon masters roll with it, adapting on the fly, making it seem like this was the plan all along. They say yes, and instead of no, but they build on player ideas, rewarding creativity even when it breaks their carefully prepared adventure. This improvisation, this collaborative storytelling, is where the magic happens, in those unscripted moments that no one could have predicted. Here's a concept that makes combat more dynamic: opportunity attacks. When an enemy moves away from you in melee combat without taking the disengage action, you can use your reaction to make a single melee attack against them. This simple rule creates tactical depth. Enemies can't just run past the fighter to attack the wizard without consequences. Positioning matters. The barbarian can hold a choke point, threatening anyone who tries to pass. The monk with high mobility can dart in and out without triggering these attacks. Opportunity attacks make combat feel more realistic, more tactical, like an actual fight where disengaging from an opponent is a risk. Let's end our 100 facts with something fundamental: the social contract at the heart of every D&D game. The Dungeon Master agrees to create interesting challenges and tell stories that engage the players. The players agree to engage with those stories and not deliberately derail the game. Everyone agrees to respect each other, to share the spotlight, to help each other have fun. This unspoken agreement makes D&D work. It's not the DM versus the players, it's everyone working together to create something memorable. When a player rolls a critical hit and everyone at the table cheers, even though it ruins the DM's carefully planned encounter, that's the social contract in action. When the DM lets a rule slide because enforcing it would make the game less fun, that's trust and collaboration. D&D works because everyone wants it to work, because we all come together with the shared goal of having a good time and telling a story worth remembering. Long, peaceful pause, almost a breath. And so we've completed our journey through 100 facts, from that small white box in 1974 to the global phenomenon today. From Gary Gygax's basement to streaming shows watched by millions. From 3 booklets totaling 150 pages to countless source books, adventures, and settings. From 3 simple classes to a rainbow of options. From misunderstood hobby to celebrated art form. We've rolled dice and told stories. We've created characters and said goodbye to them. We've explored dungeons and saved worlds. We've been heroes and scoundrels, warriors and wizards, mortals who became legends. This is Dungeons and Dragons, a game about gathering with friends, rolling dice, and discovering what happens next. A game where the only limit is imagination. A game that has brought joy to millions and will continue to do so for generations to come. May your rolls be high. May your adventures be memorable. And may you always find a good group to share this journey with. But wait, there are still a few more stories to tell, a few more threads to weave into our tapestry. Let's talk about something that makes combat feel heroic: death saving throws. When you reach 0 hit points, you don't immediately die. Instead, you fall unconscious and begin making death saves. Each round, you roll a d20. A 10 or higher is a success. 9 or lower is a failure. 3 successes, and you stabilize, hovering at the edge of death, but no longer slipping away. 3 failures and you die. Rolling a natural 20 means you wake up with 1 hit point. Rolling a natural 1 counts as 2 failures. Those moments when an unconscious character is making death saves while their friends fight desperately to reach them. When someone rolls their 3rd save with shaking hands, those are the moments that create stories. Death saving throws give hope while maintaining tension, a chance for dramatic rescues and heroic sacrifices. Now, let's explore a mechanical concept that defines character capability: proficiency bonus. This single number, which starts at +2 and increases to +6 at higher levels, represents your character's growing expertise. When you're proficient in a skill, you add this bonus. When you're proficient with a weapon, you add it to attack rolls. When you cast spells, it determines how hard they are to resist. The proficiency bonus is elegant in its simplicity. One number that scales with level and applies to everything you're trained in. It's the mechanical representation of experience, of a character who's learned and grown through their adventures. Let's discuss one of D&D's most iconic monsters, the Mind Flayer or Illithid. These creatures are nightmare fuel. humanoid figures with octopus-like heads, their 4 tentacles writhing as they move. Mind flayers feed on brains, using their psychic powers to stun victims before cracking open their skulls and consuming their minds. They're brilliant, cruel, and utterly alien, having come from the far realm beyond reality itself. Mind flayers once ruled a vast empire, enslaving entire races including the Githyanki and Githzerai, who eventually rebelled and destroyed their master's civilization. Now mind flayers lurk in the Underdark, building new colonies, conducting terrible experiments, always seeking to reclaim their lost empire. They represent cosmic horror in D&D, the fear of losing your very identity to an incomprehensible intelligence. Here's something wonderful that 5th edition introduced. Inspiration can be given by players to other players. The original rule was that only the DM could grant inspiration, but many tables have adopted the variant where players can reward each other. When your fellow player does something brave, clever, or wonderfully in character, you can give them inspiration from your own supply. This creates a positive feedback loop of encouragement, everyone celebrating each other's great moments. It shifts the focus from performing for the DM to celebrating each other, making the table more collaborative, more supportive, more focused on lifting each other up. Let's talk about something that changes how magic works fundamentally: the weave. In the Forgotten Realms, magic doesn't just exist freely. It flows through a metaphysical structure called the weave, maintained by Mystra, the goddess of magic. When a wizard casts a spell, they're manipulating strands of the weave. When Mystra died during the time of troubles, the weave was damaged, causing wild magic surges in dead magic zones. The weave explains why some places have more or less magic, why anti-magic fields exist, why magic behaves consistently with rules and formulas. It transforms magic from an abstract game mechanic into a fundamental force of the universe, as real as gravity or electromagnetism in our world. Now, picture a concept that makes exploration meaningful: the hex scrawl. In this style of play, the world is divided into hexagons on a map, each representing 6 miles or more. As players travel, they explore hex by hex, discovering what lies within each one. Maybe this hex contains ruins. Maybe that one has a friendly village. Perhaps another holds a monster lair or a natural wonder. The hex scrawl makes travel an adventure in itself, not just time to skip between plot points. It rewards mapping and exploration, creates emergent stories from random discoveries, gives players agency in choosing which direction to explore. It's old school D&D thinking that has found new life in modern campaigns. Let's discuss a feature that makes characters feel unique: feats. In addition to the abilities granted by your class and race, you can take feats at certain levels instead of improving your ability scores. These feats represent special training or natural talents. The Great Weapon Master can sacrifice accuracy for devastating damage. The alert character is never surprised and always acts early in combat. The lucky character can re-roll dice at crucial moments. Feats let you customize your character mechanically, creating a warrior who fights differently from other warriors, a wizard with unique capabilities. They're the mechanical expression of what makes this character special. Here's a piece of D&D's evolution, the move away from negative modifiers for non-traditional character choices. In older editions, playing certain race class combinations came with penalties. A halfling fighter was weaker than a human fighter because halflings had strength penalties. In 5th edition, and even more in the latest iterations, this has changed. Any race can excel at any class. Your halfling can be as strong as anyone else if that's how you build them. This shift represents D&D embracing broader concepts of what heroes can be, removing mechanical punishments for playing characters that break stereotypes. It's a game design change that makes the game more welcoming and more reflective of the idea that heroes come in all forms. Let's talk about a concept that makes D&D accessible to everyone: theater of the mind. While we mentioned battle mats and miniatures earlier, many groups play without any visual aids at all. The DM describes the scene, the players describe their actions, and everyone builds the battle in their imagination. The orc is about 30 feet away, behind a boulder. I move to get a clear shot and fire my bow. No measurements, no grids, no miniatures, just pure narrative. Theater of the mind keeps the game moving quickly, focuses on story over tactics, and requires nothing but imagination. It's how the game was originally played, and it remains a valid and wonderful way to experience D&D, proving that the most important gaming accessory is the shared imagination around the table. Let's discuss something that has defined D&D's recent renaissance: inclusivity and representation. The game has evolved to welcome everyone, regardless of background, identity, or experience level. Recent books include characters and creators from diverse backgrounds. The rules explicitly state that you can play characters of any gender identity, that your character's appearance and identity are yours to define. Adventure modules include disabled NPCs portrayed with dignity, LGBTQ+ characters whose identities are normalized, not sensationalized. This isn't new to many tables, where inclusive play has always existed, but seeing it in the official materials matters. It signals that D&D is for everyone, that every player can see themselves as heroes, that the game welcomes all who want to tell stories and roll dice together. And for our final fact, our 100th piece of this puzzle, let's talk about the one thing that has remained constant through every edition, every rule change, every evolution of the game. At its heart, D&D is about asking a simple question: what do you do? The dungeon master describes a situation and then asks the players that fundamental question: what do you do? Do you fight or flee? Do you trust the mysterious stranger? Do you open the ancient tome? Do you tell the truth or weave a deception? Every adventure, every campaign, every moment of play comes down to this question and the player's answers. What do you do is an invitation to agency, to creativity, to authorship of your own story. And in answering it again and again, session after session, year after year, players discover not just who their characters are, but something about themselves, about their values, their creativity, their courage, their compassion. What do you do is the heartbeat of Dungeons and Dragons, the question that has launched a million adventures and will launch a million more. Long, gentle pause. And now, truly, we've reached the end of our 100 facts. From death saving throws to proficiency bonuses, from mind flayers to the weave, from hex scrolls to feats, from inclusivity to that eternal question: what do you do? 100 windows into a game that has captured imaginations for half a century. 100 reasons why people gather around tables, physical or virtual, to roll dice and tell stories. 100 pieces of a phenomenon that has grown beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The dice are rolled, the stories are told, the adventures continue. May your rest be peaceful, and may your dreams be filled with dragons to befriend, dungeons to explore, and endless possibilities waiting for you to answer that timeless question. What do you do? Sweet dreams, adventurer,